I never imagined that my life could take such a drastic turn. The evening started like any other, but as I walked through the front door, I was greeted by a scene that shattered my world. There they were, my wife, Sarah, and her attorney, Robert, sitting together in our living room, laughter spilling from their lips as if they were old friends. The sight of them, so comfortable and intimate, sent a jolt of disbelief through me. My heart raced and my mind struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing. I stood frozen in the doorway, my breath caught in my throat. The warmth of my home suddenly felt cold and unwelcoming. I had always trusted Sarah, and the thought of her betraying me with someone so close to our lives was unbearable. My stomach twisted in knots as I replayed the moments leading up to this revelation. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, how had I been so blind? As I stepped further into the room, they turned to look at me, their faces shifting from surprise to guilt in an instant. "David," Sarah exclaimed, her voice a mix of shock and feigned innocence. I could see the panic in her eyes, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But that sympathy quickly faded, replaced by a boiling anger that surged through my veins. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside me. I could feel the tension thickening the air, a palpable weight that pressed down on us. Robert, ever the lawyer, quickly composed himself, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he stood up. "David, let's talk about this rationally," he said, his tone patronizing. "Rationally?" I scoffed, disbelief coloring my words. "You think I can talk rationally after walking in on you two?" My heart pounded as I gestured between them, the betrayal stinging like a fresh wound. I felt like a fool, a puppet whose strings had been cut, left to flounder in the reality of my shattered trust. Sarah stepped forward, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "David, please, it's not what it looks like," she pleaded, her voice trembling. But I could see through the facade. The laughter, the shared glances, they told a different story, one that I was no longer a part of. "I can't believe you would do this to me," I said, my voice cracking. "After everything we've built together." The memories flooded my mind, our wedding day, the dreams we shared, the life we had planned. It all felt like a cruel joke now, a mirage that had vanished before my eyes. Robert stepped in, trying to assert control over the situation. "David, let's not make this worse than it has to be. We can resolve this amicably." Amicably? I could hardly contain my rage. How could he even suggest that after what they had done? Amicably? I echoed, incredulity lacing my tone. "You think I'm going to sit down and have a civilized conversation after this? You're both out of your minds." The anger bubbling inside me was almost overwhelming, but beneath it lay a deep sense of betrayal and heartbreak. As I turned to leave, my mind raced with thoughts of revenge. I couldn't let them get away with this. I had to do something, anything, to make them pay for the pain they had caused me. The seeds of a plan began to form in my mind, fueled by the anger and hurt that coursed through me. I would turn the tables on them, and they would regret the day they crossed me. With that thought, I stepped out of the room, determination replacing despair. I would not be a victim in this story. I would take control, and soon, they would know the consequences of their betrayal. After that fateful evening, I was consumed by a singular thought. I couldn't let Sarah and Robert walk away unscathed. The betrayal cut deep, and the anger that followed was a fire that ignited my resolve. I needed a plan, something clever and devious that would expose them both for what they truly were. Revenge was no longer just an option, it was a necessity. I spent the following days in a haze of determination. I couldn't focus on work, and my friends noticed the change in me. I brushed off their concerns, insisting I was just busy with a project. But the truth was, my mind was racing with ideas, plotting my next move like a chess master anticipating his opponent's every play. I needed to gather evidence that would not only prove their infidelity but also destroy their reputations in the process. The first step was to gather information. I knew Robert's schedule well. He often worked late evenings and had a penchant for meeting clients at a nearby cafe. I decided to stake out the place, hoping to catch him in a compromising position with Sarah. I parked my car across the street, watching as people came and went, my heart pounding with anticipation. Hours passed, and just as I began to doubt my plan, I spotted them. They walked in together, laughing and leaning into each other as if they were the only two people in the world. My stomach churned at the sight, but I forced myself to stay calm. I pulled out my phone, discreetly recording their interactions from a distance. I captured their whispered conversations and stolen glances, each moment fueling the fire of my revenge. The next day, I decided to take things a step further. I created a fake email account, one that would allow me to communicate with Sarah without raising suspicion. I crafted a message that hinted at my knowledge of her affair, using vague language to keep her guessing. I wanted to see how she would react, to gauge her level of guilt and fear. "Hey, Sarah, I know what you've been up to. It's only a matter of time before the truth comes out. You should be careful." I hit send and waited. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I imagined her reading the message, her heart racing as she realized someone was onto her. I could picture her glancing nervously at her phone, her mind racing with possibilities. Would she confide in Robert? Would she panic? As the hours dragged on, I finally received a response. "Who is this? You have no idea what you're talking about." The denial was expected, but I could sense the underlying fear in her words. It was a small victory, but it was enough to keep me motivated. With my confidence growing, I turned my attention to the hidden camera I had installed in our living room. I had been recording their conversations for days, capturing every moment they spent together in my home. I knew that if I could gather enough incriminating evidence, I could confront them both and watch as their lives unraveled before my eyes. I spent the next few nights reviewing the footage, my heart racing with each clip. I saw them sharing intimate moments, laughing, and planning their future together. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I was determined to use it to my advantage. I began to compile a dossier of their interactions, complete with timestamps and context. As I pieced together the evidence, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. I was no longer the victim, I was the one in control. I imagined the look on their faces when I confronted them with the truth. The thought of their shock and despair fueled my resolve. But I knew I had to be careful. Robert was a lawyer, and he would be on high alert if he suspected anything. I needed to keep my plans under wraps while I executed my strategy. I decided to play the long game, biding my time until the moment was right. With each passing day, I grew more confident in my scheme. I was ready to turn the tables on them, to expose their betrayal in a way that would leave them both reeling. I would make them pay for the pain they had caused me. And I would do it in a way that would ensure they would never forget it. The stage was set, and I was ready for the next act in this twisted drama. With my plan taking shape, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. The thrill of plotting my revenge was intoxicating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was finally regaining control over my life. I had spent too long in the shadows, nursing my wounds while Sarah and Robert reveled in their deception. Now, it was my turn to shine a light on their betrayal. I decided to create a more elaborate setup to catch them in the act. My hidden camera had provided me with valuable footage, but I needed something more concrete, something that would leave no room for denial. I began to devise a scheme that would not only expose their affair but also turn the tables on Robert, using his legal expertise against him. I knew that Robert often met with clients at a local bar after work. It was a casual place where he felt comfortable, and I was certain that he would let his guard down there. I planned to go there myself, posing as a concerned friend of Sarah's who had heard rumors about their relationship. I would plant the seeds of doubt in his mind, making him think that I was on his side while secretly gathering information. The night of my plan arrived. I dressed casually but sharply, wanting to blend in while still looking presentable. I arrived at the bar early, taking a seat at the far end where I could observe the entrance. My heart raced with anticipation as I waited for Robert to arrive. I rehearsed my lines in my head, determined to keep my composure no matter how the conversation unfolded. When Robert finally walked in, he was alone, looking relaxed and confident. I waved him over, feigning a friendly demeanor. "Hey, Robert, fancy seeing you here. Mind if I join you?" I asked, keeping my tone light and casual. He smiled, clearly pleased to see a familiar face, and gestured for me to take a seat. We exchanged pleasantries, and I carefully steered the conversation toward Sarah. "You know, I've been worried about her lately. She seems a bit off," I said, watching for his reaction. His expression shifted, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "Oh, what do you mean?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice as if sharing a secret. "I heard some rumors about her spending time with someone else. I just hope she's not getting involved with anyone shady," I said, watching his eyes narrow. Robert's demeanor changed, and I could tell he was on high alert. What kind of rumors? He pressed, his lawyer instincts kicking in. I shrugged, playing it cool. You know how it is, people talk. I just thought you should know, especially since you're both close. I could see the tension in his shoulders as he processed my words. I had planted a seed of doubt, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it would start to grow. As we continued to chat, I subtly dropped hints about my knowledge of their affair, making it seem like I was merely concerned for Sarah's well-being. I wanted him to feel cornered, to think that he needed to protect himself. The more I spoke, the more I could see his confidence waver. After a while, I decided to take a risk. You know, I've been thinking about how easily things can spiral out of control. It's important to be careful, especially when there are so many eyes watching, I said, letting my words hang in the air. Robert's expression shifted again, and I could see the realization dawning on him. He was beginning to understand that I was not just a concerned friend. I was a potential threat. I could almost feel the gears turning in his mind as he weighed his options. David, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you, Sarah and I are just friends, he said, his voice steady but lacking conviction. I smiled, feigning innocence. Of course, I understand. But sometimes, appearances can be deceiving. Just be cautious, okay? You never know who might be watching. With that, I excused myself, leaving him to ponder my words. As I walked out of the bar, I felt a rush of exhilaration. I had successfully planted the seeds of doubt in Robert's mind, and I knew that he would be more cautious around Sarah from now on. But I wasn't done yet. I still needed to gather more evidence to solidify my case against them. I returned home, replaying the footage from my hidden camera, searching for the perfect moments to use against them. I wanted to create a narrative that would not only expose their affair but also paint Robert as the manipulative predator he was. Over the next few days, I meticulously edited the footage, crafting a story that would leave no room for denial. I added timestamps and context, ensuring that everything was clear and indisputable. I could already imagine the look on their faces when I confronted them with the evidence. It would be a moment of reckoning, and I was determined to savor every second of it. As the days turned into a week, I felt my anticipation building. I had everything I needed to execute my plan, and I was ready to bring it all to a head. The stage was set, and I was prepared to reveal the truth, no matter the cost. I would make them pay for their betrayal, and I would do it in a way that would ensure they would never forget the consequences of their actions. The day had finally arrived. I had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, and now, as I stood in front of the mirror, I could feel the weight of anticipation pressing down on me. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and reminded myself that I was in control. Today, I would confront Sarah and Robert with the evidence of their betrayal, and I would watch their world come crashing down. I had arranged for them to meet at our house under the pretense of discussing some important matters. I knew that Sarah would be curious, and Robert, ever the opportunist, would want to appear supportive. Little did they know that I had set the stage for their undoing. As I waited for them to arrive, I paced the living room, rehearsing my lines in my head. I wanted to strike the perfect balance between calm and assertive, to make them feel the gravity of the situation without giving away my emotional turmoil. The hidden camera was ready, capturing every moment, and I felt a surge of adrenaline as I heard the sound of their car pulling into the driveway. They entered the house, and I greeted them with a forced smile. "Thanks for coming, you two. I appreciate you making time for this." I gestured for them to sit down, my heart racing as I watched them exchange glances. They had no idea what was about to unfold. "David, is everything okay?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. I could see the worry in her eyes, but I was determined to keep my composure. "Everything is fine," I replied, my tone steady. "I just wanted to have a candid conversation about some things I've noticed." I paused, letting the tension build. "I think it's important that we address the elephant in the room." Robert shifted in his seat, his confidence wavering as he glanced at Sarah. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to maintain an air of nonchalance. I leaned forward, my gaze locked on both of them. "I know about your affair," I said, my voice unwavering. The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Their reactions were instantaneous. Sarah's face drained of color, and Robert's expression shifted from surprise to defensive. "What are you talking about?" Sarah stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, allowing myself a moment of satisfaction. I've seen the messages, the late-night meetings, and I have it all on video. You thought you could hide it from me, but I was always watching. I reached for my laptop and opened the folder containing the edited footage. As I began to play the clips, I watched their faces transform from disbelief to horror. The recordings captured their laughter, their intimate conversations, and the moments that exposed their betrayal in stark detail. I could see the realization dawning on Sarah as she recognized her voice, her own words, echoing back at her. "David, please, you don't understand," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like." But I was done with the excuses. "It's exactly what it looks like, Sarah. You've been lying to me, and now you're trying to cover it up." I paused the video, letting the silence stretch between us. "How could you do this to me? After everything we've been through?" Robert, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to regain control. "David, let's talk about this rationally." "There's no need for." "No need for what?" I interrupted, my anger boiling over. "No need for you to face the consequences of your actions? You think you can just manipulate your way out of this?" I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, and I reveled in the power of the moment. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, desperation etched across her face. "I'm so sorry, David. I never meant for it to happen. It just did." "Did it just happen, or did you plan it?" I shot back, my voice sharp. "You were sneaking around behind my back. And you thought I wouldn't find out? You betrayed my trust, and now you want me to feel sorry for you?" The tension in the room was palpable, and I could see Robert's composure crumbling. He glanced at Sarah, his expression a mix of concern and frustration. "David, this isn't helping anyone. We can figure this out," he said, trying to defuse the situation. But I wasn't in the mood for negotiation. Figure what out? How to continue lying to me? How to keep this charade going? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms as I stared them down. "This ends now." With that, I turned off the video and leaned forward, my gaze piercing. "I'm giving you both a choice. You can either come clean about everything, or I will take this footage to the authorities and make sure everyone knows what you've done. I will not be the one left holding the bag while you two walk away unscathed." The room fell silent, and I could see the panic in their eyes. Sarah looked at Robert, searching for support, but he was clearly at a loss for words. The power dynamic had shifted, and I reveled in it. "David, please," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I'll do anything. Just don't take it that far." I nodded slowly, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. "Then it's time for the truth. No more lies, no more deceit. You both need to own up to what you've done." As they began to speak, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The truth was finally coming out, and I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the one in control, and I would make sure they understood the consequences of their betrayal. The unraveling had begun, and I was ready to watch it all unfold. As Sarah and Robert began to confess, I felt a mix of emotions coursing through me. The anger that had fueled my plans was now tempered with a strange sense of satisfaction. I had orchestrated this moment, and now I was witnessing the unraveling of their web of lies. But I knew that this was just the beginning. The real game was only starting. Sarah took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she spoke. "David, I never meant for it to go this far. I was feeling lost, and Robert was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. It just happened." Her words were a feeble attempt to justify her actions, and I could see the guilt etched on her face. Robert, on the other hand, tried to maintain his composure. "David, I made a mistake, and I take full responsibility for it. But you had to understand that Sarah and I were just friends." It didn't mean anything. His tone was defensive, and I could sense the desperation in his voice. "Just friends?" I scoffed, incredulous. "You think I'm going to buy that? You've been lying to me this entire time, and now you want me to believe that it was all just innocent?" I leaned forward, my gaze intense. "This isn't just about you two anymore. This is about trust, loyalty, and the destruction of everything I thought we had." The tension in the room was thick, and I could feel the weight of their guilt pressing down on them. I had them right where I wanted them, and I wasn't going to let them off the hook easily. "You both need to understand that there are consequences for your actions. I'm not going to let this slide." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, her voice breaking. "David, please. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I made a terrible mistake." "And what about you, Robert?" I turned my attention to him, my voice dripping with disdain. You're supposed to be a professional, someone who helps people navigate their lives. Instead, you've chosen to betray your client's trust. How does that make you feel? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly struggling to find the right words. I know I messed up, and I'm willing to face the consequences. But I don't want this to escalate. Let's talk about how we can move forward. Move forward? I echoed, incredulous. You think we can just brush this under the rug and pretend it never happened? You both have to face the reality of what you've done. I paused, letting the gravity of my words sink in. I have the evidence, and I'm not afraid to use it. The room fell silent, and I could see the panic rising in their eyes. They were beginning to realize that I was serious about following through on my threats. I had spent too long being the victim, and now it was time for them to feel the weight of their actions. David, please, Sarah pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll do anything to make this right. Just give me a chance to prove that I can change. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. You've had your chances, Sarah. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about holding both of you accountable for the pain you've caused. Robert, sensing the urgency of the situation, leaned forward. What do you want from us, David? Tell us how we can fix this. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, weighing my options. I could expose them both, but I also knew that could lead to a messy legal battle. I didn't want to drag this out any longer than necessary. Instead, I decided to use this moment as leverage. I want you both to come clean to everyone. I want you to tell your friends, your families, and anyone else who needs to know the truth about what happened. You need to own your mistakes and face the consequences together. Their faces fell, and I could see the fear in their eyes. You're asking us to destroy our lives, Sarah said, her voice trembling. No, I corrected her. You've already done that. I'm just allowing you to take responsibility for your actions. This is your chance to show that you're willing to face the truth. Robert looked at Sarah, and I could see the internal struggle playing out in his mind. David, this is going to ruin everything, he said, his voice strained. Everything was already ruined the moment you decided to betray my trust, I shot back, my anger flaring again. You both need to understand that this isn't just about the affair. It's about the lies, the deceit, and the destruction of our relationships. You've both chosen this path and now you need to live with the consequences. As they sat in silence, I could see the weight of my words sinking in. The reality of the situation was hitting them hard, and I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. They were finally facing the truth, and I was the one holding the cards. Now, I want you to think about this carefully, I continued, my voice steady. You have until the end of the week to come clean. If you don't, I will make sure everyone knows what you've done. I won't be the one left holding the bag while you two walk away unscathed. With that, I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. I could feel the tension in the room as I walked toward the door, leaving them to grapple with the reality of their choices. I had set the stage for their downfall, and now it was time to watch the drama unfold. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had taken control of the situation, and I was no longer the victim. I was the one in charge, and I would make sure that Sarah and Robert understood the consequences of their betrayal. The game of cat and mouse had begun, and I was ready to see it through to the end. The days that followed my confrontation with Sarah and Robert were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a strange mix of triumph and anxiety as I waited for their response. I had laid out my terms, and now it was time to see if they would rise to the occasion or crumble under the weight of their guilt. I spent my days in a haze, replaying the confrontation in my mind and imagining the various ways they might react. Would they come clean, or would they try to fight back? On the fourth day after our meeting, I received a text from Sarah. My heart raced as I opened the message, half expecting her to plead for mercy. Instead, she requested a meeting. Can we talk? I need to explain everything, it read. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to expect. But I knew I had to face her again. I needed to see how far she was willing to go to make amends. We agreed to meet at a small cafe near our neighborhood. I arrived early, my nerves on edge. The cafe was bustling with activity, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. I chose a table in the corner, hoping to maintain some semblance of privacy. As I waited, I couldn't help but wonder what Sarah would say. Would she take responsibility, or would she try to shift the blame onto me? When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Her usual confident demeanor was replaced by a look of vulnerability. She approached the table slowly, her eyes downcast. "David," she said softly, taking a seat across from me. "Thanks for coming," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I wanted to give her a chance to speak without interruption, but I was also prepared for anything. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since our last conversation," she began, her voice shaky. "I know I messed up, and I understand why you're so angry. I just want to explain myself." I nodded, urging her to continue. "I felt so alone for a long time," she confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "Things between us changed, and I didn't know how to handle it. Robert was there to listen, and I let myself get carried away. I never wanted to hurt you, David. I was just trying to find comfort in a difficult time." Her words struck a chord, but I couldn't let my guard down. "Sarah, I understand that relationships can be complicated, but that doesn't excuse your actions. You chose to betray my trust. You could have come to me and talked about how you were feeling, but instead, you went behind my back." "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I regret it every single day. I'm so sorry for what I did. I want to make it right." "Making it right starts with honesty," I said, my tone firm. "You need to tell everyone the truth. You can't just sweep this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen." She looked down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting nervously. "I'm scared, David. I don't want to lose everything, my job, my friends, you." "Then you need to take responsibility for your actions," I replied, my voice steady. "It's the only way to move forward. You have to show that you're willing to face the consequences." Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "What if I told you that I'm willing to do whatever it takes? I'll talk to Robert, and we can come clean together. I'll tell everyone the truth, even if it means losing everything." I studied her face, looking for any signs of insincerity. But all I saw was desperation and a glimmer of hope. "If you're serious about this, then you need to act quickly. You have until the end of the week. If you don't come clean, I will." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll do it, David. I promise. I want to make this right." As we spoke, I could see the weight of her guilt beginning to lift, but I also knew that words were easy. Actions were what mattered. "And what about Robert?" I asked, my voice low. "Are you prepared to face him and tell him that this is over?" "I will," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I'll tell him that I want to end it, that I need to take responsibility for my actions. I can't keep living this lie." I felt a flicker of hope but remained cautious. "You need to be strong, Sarah. This won't be easy, and Robert won't take it well. He's not going to just walk away quietly." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "But I can't keep living like this. I want to fight for our relationship, David. I want to show you that I can change." As we finished our conversation, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since I discovered the affair, I felt like there was a glimmer of hope for us. But I also knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. It wouldn't be easy to rebuild the trust that had been shattered, and I was still grappling with my feelings of betrayal. After our meeting, I returned home, my mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. I had given Sarah a chance to redeem herself, but I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. Would she follow through on her promise? Would Robert accept her decision, or would he lash out in anger? The following days were filled with tension as I waited for Sarah to take action. I kept replaying our conversation in my mind, hoping that she would find the strength to confront Robert and come clean. But I also prepared myself for the possibility that she might falter, that the fear of losing everything could hold her back. As the end of the week approached, I found myself on edge, anxiously awaiting news. I had allowed Sarah to take control of her narrative, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The stakes were high, and I knew that the outcome would determine the course of our future. Finally, on the last day of the week, I received a text from Sarah. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you about Robert." My heart raced as I read the message. This was it, the moment of truth. I quickly replied, agreeing to meet at the same cafe where we had last spoken. As I arrived, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension. I had given Sarah the chance to make things right, but would she seize it? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever news she brought. The game was still in play, but now the stakes were higher than ever. As I waited for Sarah to arrive at the cafe, my mind raced with possibilities. The moment of truth was upon us, and I could feel the tension building in my chest. I had given her a chance to come clean, to face the consequences of her actions. But I still harbored doubts. Would she be able to confront Robert? Would she truly take responsibility for her betrayal? When Sarah walked in, she looked visibly shaken. Her eyes were red from what I assumed were tears, and her usually confident demeanor was replaced by a look of uncertainty. I motioned for her to sit down, my heart pounding in anticipation of what she was about to say. "David," she began, her voice trembling. "I talked to Robert." My stomach dropped at her words. I had been preparing for this moment. But now that it was here, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. "And?" I prompted, trying to keep my voice steady. "He didn't take it well," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the table. "I told him that I wanted to end things, that I needed to take responsibility for what I did. He got angry and accused me of being weak." "Did he threaten you?" I asked, my voice low. I could feel the protective instinct rising within me, and I wanted to ensure she was safe. "No, but he tried to manipulate me," she replied, her voice shaking. "He said that if I went public with what happened, it would ruin both of our lives. He made me feel like I was making a huge mistake." I leaned back in my chair, processing her words. Robert was a master manipulator, and I knew he would use every trick in the book to maintain control. "What did you say?" "I told him that I needed to think about it," Sarah confessed, her eyes welling with tears. "I didn't want to fight with him, and I thought maybe if I gave myself some time, I could figure out a way to handle it." "Sarah, you can't let him intimidate you," I said firmly. "This is your life, and you need to take back control. You can't let him dictate what you do or how you feel." "I know," she said, wiping away a tear. "But I'm scared, David. I don't want to lose everything, and I don't want to hurt you even more." "Staying silent is only going to hurt you more in the long run," I replied, my voice steady. "You need to stand your ground. If you don't take a stand now, Robert will continue to manipulate you." She nodded, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. "What if he tries to retaliate? What if he makes my life miserable? Then we'll deal with it together," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You're not alone in this. I'm here for you, and I'll help you face whatever comes next. But you have to decide to come clean." As we spoke, I felt a sense of urgency building within me. I knew that Robert wouldn't take this lying down. He would fight to keep his secrets hidden, and I had to be prepared for whatever he might throw our way. "Listen, Sarah," I said, my voice low and serious. "I think we need to set a trap for Robert. If he thinks he can manipulate you into silence, we need to show him that you're stronger than he realizes." Her eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I think we should confront him together," I explained. "We can arrange a meeting where you can tell him that you're done with the affair and that you're ready to come clean. But we do it in a way that puts him on the defensive. If he feels cornered, he might reveal more than he intends to." Sarah hesitated, her brow furrowing in thought. "That sounds risky. What if he reacts badly?" "Then we'll have the evidence we need," I replied, my determination unwavering. "I have recordings of your conversations, and if he tries to lash out, we'll have proof of his manipulation. It's time to turn the tables on him." After a moment of contemplation, Sarah nodded slowly. "Okay, I'm in, but we have to be careful. I don't want to provoke him too much." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "We'll be strategic about it. We'll choose a public place, somewhere he can't afford to make a scene. And we'll have a plan in place for how to handle his reaction." As we finalized our plan, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were taking control of the narrative, and I was determined to ensure that Robert would no longer be able to manipulate Sarah or me. The next day, we arranged to meet Robert at a local restaurant, one that was busy but not too loud. I wanted to ensure that we had witnesses, just in case things escalated. I could feel the tension building as the time approached, but I also felt a sense of excitement. This was our chance to reclaim our lives. When Robert arrived, he looked confident, a smirk playing on his lips. He greeted us both with a casual wave, but I could see the flicker of surprise in his eyes when he noticed the tension in the air. "Hey, you two, what's going on?" he asked, his tone light. "Robert, we need to talk," Sarah said, her voice steady. His expression shifted slightly, and I could sense the shift in his demeanor. "About what?" "About us," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "I'm done with the affair, and I need to come clean about everything." The smirk on Robert's face vanished, replaced by a look of disbelief. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice low. "I'm done lying to myself and David," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "I want to tell everyone the truth about what happened." Robert's eyes narrowed, and I could see the gears turning in his mind as he processed her words. You don't want to do this, Sarah. Think about the consequences. No, Robert. I've thought about it, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next, she said, her voice firm. As the tension in the air thickened, I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. This was the moment we had been waiting for, and I was ready to see how Robert would react. Let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. You're making a huge mistake. Am I? Sarah shot back, her voice unwavering. You've been manipulating me for too long, and I'm not going to let you do it anymore. Robert's expression darkened, and I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface. You think you can just walk away from this? You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Try me, I said, my voice low and steady. We have evidence of your manipulation, Robert. If you try to retaliate, we'll make sure everyone knows the truth. The tension in the air was palpable as Robert's eyes darted between us. He was cornered, and I could see the realization dawning on him. David, you don't want to go down this road, he said, his tone shifting to one of desperation. Too late for that, I replied, my resolve unwavering. You've made your choices, and now it's time to face the consequences. As we sat there, the weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. We had set the trap, and now it was up to Robert to decide how he would respond. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, and I knew that this was just the beginning of the end for him. The game was on, and I was ready to see it through to the finish. The atmosphere in the restaurant was thick with tension as Robert processed the confrontation. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, assessing his options, weighing the risks. The confident facade he had worn so easily was crumbling, and I felt a surge of satisfaction at the sight. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when he would have to face the consequences of his actions. Let's not do this here, Robert finally said, his voice low and strained. This isn't the place for a discussion like this. I leaned forward, my gaze steady. You wanted to have a conversation, Robert. We're just making sure it's a productive one. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she reached for mine, seeking reassurance. I squeezed her hand, silently encouraging her to stay strong. This was her moment to reclaim her life, and I was determined to support her every step of the way. David, you have to understand, Robert continued, his tone shifting to one of desperation. If you go public with this, it will ruin both of our lives. You don't want to do that. Why not? I shot back, my voice firm. You've already ruined yours by choosing to betray my trust and manipulate Sarah. You have no right to dictate how this ends. He glanced around the restaurant, clearly aware of the eyes on us. You're making a mistake, both of you. Do you think you can just walk away from this without consequences? I have connections, and I won't hesitate to use them. Threats won't work on us anymore, Robert, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. I'm done being afraid of you. You've held power over me for too long, and I'm not going to let you control my life anymore. The fire in her words ignited something within me. I was proud of her for standing her ground, but I also knew that Robert was dangerous. He was a lawyer, and he had spent years learning how to manipulate situations to his advantage. I had to be careful, we couldn't let our guard down. Let's be clear, I said, my voice steady. We have evidence of your manipulation. If you try to retaliate, we will make sure everyone knows the truth. You can't intimidate us anymore. Robert's expression shifted from anger to panic as he realized he was cornered. You think you can intimidate me? You have no idea what I can do. Try us, I said, my voice firm. We have evidence of your manipulation, and we're not afraid to use it. At that moment, Robert's bravado crumbled, and I could see the fear in his eyes. You don't want to do this, he said, his voice shaking. But I wasn't backing down. You've made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences. It's time for the truth to come out. As the tension in the air thickened, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Robert was losing control, and I was ready to see how far he would go to protect himself. Let's end this once and for all, I said, my voice steady. You can either come clean, or we will make sure everyone knows the truth. Robert's eyes darted around the warehouse, searching for an escape route. You think you can just walk away from this? I won't let you ruin my life. Your life was ruined the moment you chose to betray us. I replied, my voice unwavering. Now it's time to face the music. With that, I pulled out my phone and hit record, capturing the moment for posterity. This is your chance, Robert. Come clean, or face the consequences. As the reality of the situation sank in, I could see the fight leaving him. Robert's bravado had vanished, replaced by a look of desperation. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said, his voice trembling. "I understand perfectly," I replied, my resolve unshaken. "You've manipulated and hurt people for too long, and it's time for you to face the truth." At that moment, I knew we had him cornered. The showdown was upon us, and I was ready to see it through to the end. The truth would come out, and Robert would finally have to face the consequences of his actions. The game was over, and I was determined to ensure that justice would be served.